A federal court is ordering Minnesota absentee ballots arriving after 8 p.m. on Election Day be separated, leaving them open to being invalidated after voting ends. The Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the Minnesota Secretary of State order that all ballots postmarked by Election Day be counted if they show up within a week from Tuesday. It's the latest victory for Republicans trying to limit how many mail-in votes are counted in this election. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now with more from Doylestown, Pennsylvania, right outside Philadelphia. Caitlin, welcome. Great to see you. So Minnesota is now at least the second battleground state, along with Pennsylvania, where you are today, to be ordered to separate late arriving ballots. Help us understand the impact this could have after the election ends, and what does it mean for people who still have mail-in ballots at home?
That's right. Well, here in Pennsylvania, the state Supreme Court ruled that ballots could be received and counted after Election Day as long as they arrive by Friday, November 6th, postmarked before Election Day. Republicans in the state tried to challenge that. The Supreme Court said that that ruling will stand. So if the ballots arrive by Friday, they can still be counted. But the conservatives on the court said that doesn't rule out the possibility that they could rule on this after Election Day. And so that's why you've seen the Secretary of State here issue guidance to counties to separate out those ballots that arrive after Election Day. Why is that so important? Well, in a state like Pennsylvania, which was determined by 44,000 votes in 2016, any little vote, any margin makes a big difference here. And so what officials in this state and elsewhere are encouraging people to do, they're saying that if you still have your ballot at home and haven't put it in the mail, then don't. Drop it off in person. I'm outside of the Bucks County courthouse where there are 2 secure drop boxes inside. They're monitored by a security guard, and we've seen a steady stream of people dropping off their ballots here in person, and they've all been telling us no matter who they're voting for, they wanted to make sure their ballot was in to be counted. So that's the advice that we're hearing here on the ground in Pennsylvania and from officials around the country, that it's too late to put your ballot in the mail. Drop it off at your clerk's office, your supervisor's office, anywhere where there's a secure drop box. You don't have to depend on the Postal Service that way.
All right, and Caitlin, you spoke to some voters at that very polling place about what they think will happen after the election. Let's listen to some of that.
Do you think that after this election, people will be able to come together?
I hope so. I'm trying to remain hopeful. I think Joe Biden will give a good chance and opportunity to bring people together.
Everyone's praying for a landslide so there'll be no argument. And I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen after the election. I really don't. But I hope it gets better than it is now, because I don't think we're going to get back to normal until well into 21.
So, Caitlin, how do voters tell you they are dealing with all the uncertainty around this race?
Yeah, 4 days to go until Election Day, and it is high anxiety here on the ground for people supporting either candidate. What's been interesting here in Pennsylvania, and the reason that we're focused on this state in the final days of this campaign, is because this is a state that has not had early voting before. This is the first time that they had it. It's over now, but you can still drop off your absentee ballot. And they are expecting more people to vote absentee than ever before. The key thing to know about Pennsylvania is that, unlike in other states, they can't start even opening up ballots to be processed until Election Day. So for weeks and weeks and weeks, state officials have been cautioning people that, look, we may not know, well, probably won't know the results of Pennsylvania on Election Day, because you can't open those ballots until Election Day. It's going to take a lot of time to just process all of those. And so that's kind of the message. So people here in Pennsylvania know that it was a close race in 2016. They know that every vote counts, and they know that if it comes down to Pennsylvania, that all eyes will be on this state and that it could be a while. That's why you see the candidates really trying to focus here in Bucks County, where we are. The reason we're focused here, it's about an hour north of Philadelphia. This area is becoming increasingly a battleground. Hillary Clinton won it by just fewer than 3,000 votes. President Trump is coming here tomorrow to campaign, and former Vice President Biden will be in Philadelphia on Sunday. Shows you how key this state is and this region of the state is in terms of votes.
Right. Well, you know, issues of voting are so important right now. According to the New York Times, lawyers have already filed more than 300 voting lawsuits across 44 states this election. And they write, quote, in almost every instance, Democrats are trying to make it easier for Americans to cast ballots, and Republicans are trying to make it harder. So, Caitlin, explain that strategy for us, because the optics don't seem to be good for the Republican Party if they start to be known as the party that is trying to limit Americans' voting options.
Well, two key things that they were trying to do. First, to make sure that you can't start processing ballots before Election Day. The other important thing that they've tried to do is try to challenge, as I mentioned, ballots coming in after Election Day. They haven't been successful in that. The state Supreme Court ruling stands, and the Supreme Court said that they don't have enough time to rule on that. But they didn't rule it out. They didn't rule out ruling on it after Election Day, when there will be a conservative majority on the court. So that has a lot of people here in Pennsylvania concerned about that. But it's interesting, Tanya, on the ground here, especially where we are right now, we've talked to supporters of Biden and Trump. Trump supporters are voting absentee. They're voting early here. So to not encourage early voting and to not encourage people to get their ballots in this way can possibly leave votes on the table.
Right. All right. So, Caitlin, as we mentioned, both candidates are in the Midwest today. President Trump is in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Joe Biden is in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. By our embed Bo Erickson's count, it is the first time in the general election that Joe Biden has visited 3 states in one day. Tell us why the former vice president is opting for a less aggressive travel schedule.
Well, in the final stretch of the campaign, where the candidates go and how they campaign sends a message about where they think this race is going. We know for the Biden campaign, they've tried to make coronavirus front and center because that's a measure on which they are leading in the polls. So the contrast in styles, not having a big events, having socially distanced events, and not traveling a lot, they argue, shows that contrast with the president, who's holding big rallies, multiple rallies a day. The president's team argues that that shows enthusiasm and strength for his campaign. Of course, we're still in a pandemic, and especially in those Midwestern states, we're seeing an uptick in cases. So having those big rallies does not fall in line with the recommendations from the CDC, especially as those cases are growing. It's significant where Biden is campaigning. You mentioned he's going to Iowa, a state that Trump won overwhelmingly, but he's also going to Minnesota, a state where the Trump campaign believes that they can make inroads and possibly win. Minnesota was determined by a small margin for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Donald Trump came pretty close to winning it. And so that's why the Trump campaign feels like if they're going to maybe fall behind in some other states, they could possibly make up ground in Minnesota. So that's why it's significant that Biden is going there to try to shore up that support while he's in the Midwest.
All right, and Democratic vice presidential nominee Kamala Harris is in Texas today, where early voting turnout has already surpassed the state's entire 2016 total. Texas usually ranks near the bottom of the country in voter participation. So, Caitlin, why are things so different this time around?
Yeah, huge headline coming out of Texas and looking at those early vote numbers. A couple of things to consider. One, while the Republican governor limited the number of drop boxes in counties, he did extend the window for voting early by about 6 days. So that has allowed people to come and vote early. So that's helpful for those numbers. They also have seen a big increase in voter registration in the state. Could also help account for those big numbers there. And in some of these early voting locations, they're open for 24 hours. So trying to accommodate this influx, this shows the enthusiasm for voting. The big question that we have as we're looking at all of these early voting numbers is, well, we see that Democrats registered Democrats are returning ballots at higher rates. the president's campaign is depending on election day turnout. So that's the big question. Can the president's campaign compete with these early voting numbers on election day? That remains to be seen, and that's what we'll be watching in all of these states, but especially here in Pennsylvania.
All right. Well, Caitlin Huey-Burns in Pennsylvania, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.